Hey, everybody. Thank you for coming so much. Thank you for coming to our AI roundtable. This is a very hot topic. We found out this is what our clients are interested in. This is what we want to talk about. This is the type of discussions we want to have in the community. My name is Melinda Louder. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing at Moser Consulting. Just a little housekeeping. We want to keep it very casual. If you need to get up at any time, we have drinks in the back. The restrooms are right through this hallway and make a short turn. If you need to get up at any time, feel free to do that. We'll just keep the discussions going. If you have any questions you want to submit to the panel, the sheets on your tables have a QR code. You can just scan that and submit the questions. I will be watching them come in, and for every question submitted through the QR code, we will donate to a charity, which is Firefly, which helps families in Indianapolis and actually all over the state now. Families in need and in trouble. So submit your questions that way. You can feel free to raise your hand and speak up, but most people prefer to do the QR code and have it submitted to someone. After we are done here, when we wrap it up, we are going to walk over to Bear Day. It is just down the street, and then you turn out that way and go right across that little alley. We're going to have a section of the bar, just some drinks, some casual conversation with our panelists and all of you. So we hope you can stick around for that. We are recording this. We will send out the recording via email and a follow-up as soon as we get it processed this week. So if you need to refer to anything from that, feel free to wait for that, and feel free to connect with any of us. Sean McAdams, Adrian Watts, they're both with Moser, or myself about any topics we discuss here today. So I am the Director of Sales and Marketing at Moser Consulting. We are a technology consulting solutions provider. Most of you in the room are familiar with Moser. A few of you may have found just the event without being invited by Moser, which is great. Happy to see you. But if you don't know anything about Moser, we've been in business for 28 years. I think our birthday was last week. So we started in Indianapolis. Now we have 2 offices in Indianapolis and 1 in Maryland. We cover application services, business services, data and analytics, core technologies, and managed IT services. So just about anything you need in tech, and obviously we're very interested in the cutting edge of new technologies and AI. So this isn't really about me today, so I'm just going to introduce Sean McAdams. He's the Vice President of our Core Technologies Division. And Sean is going to introduce the panelists and get us going.
I'm actually going to have the panelists introduce themselves because that's going to go way better. But I'm Sean McAdams. I think I've had the pleasure to interact with a decent number of you. I've been at Moser since 2015. I joined Moser in 2015, specifically focused in data and analytics. So from 2015 until 2022, I was helping sort of establish and build out that division. In 2022, we decided to replace me with a much better version of me that will introduce themselves here shortly. And then I took over our infrastructure that time Moser won. So I appreciate everybody coming out. If you submit your questions, even if we don't get to them, we're going to end up having them, the panelists go through them and then send them out later. So just because you might not hear it come up today, don't think that we don't have it and aren't going to answer it. Most likely, Melinda has Slacked it to me, and I've ignored the Slack message. So yeah, just level setting what the expectation here. That's going to happen. But I definitely appreciate everybody coming out. Hope you do stick around for the networking after. How many here? That's why you're here. Like you just okay. But if we can, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with DJ, and we're going to work back. I want to have you guys introduce yourself, your role, but I also want to do a little bit of an icebreaker and let everybody know, whether it's personally or professionally, how AI is impacting your life today. DJ?
Hi, everyone. I'm DJ Plazik. I'm an executive director with IU Health in our revenue cycle services team, which is a piece of our system finance team. So basically the space that helps you get everything paid for the services that our clinicians render. Informally, I run we call our Operations Innovation Work Group, which is our low-code, no-code solutions training and development within our system finance team. And then informally, just technology nerd, always trying to learn and grow And sometimes it's personal, sometimes it's business, sometimes it's both. So how it has helped me, I would say over the past 2 years, the growth of a lot of the tools that are easy use. You don't have to be a computer scientist to go in and figure out how to learn and build and implement things. That has probably been the biggest transformation in my life, both personally and professionally. Being able to apply that to both work and outside of work with just being able to get to solutions and technology, and now advancing rapidly with the generative AI solutions that are out there without needing to know how to build a program.
You guys can probably hear me like this. Hi, Cherish Getz. DJ is my peer, so I also work for IU Health. And I oversee the middle portion of the revenue cycle, so health information management and facility and professional coding. I've been doing this work for about 15 years. So started at Franciscan, implemented Epic, really enjoyed that. Went to IU Health, started to implement Cerner. And now sitting as an executive, of course, we've got the budget restrictions and do more with less. And so really been leaning into partnering with IS and figuring out multiple ways to automate as much as possible. I have a team of about 500. If you add the vendors, it's closer to 1,000. So there's a large operational portion to the work that I do, which has its own headaches, but it's opportunities as well. And I joke a lot around Chat GPT. So DJ and I sit around the executive table, and I'm not sure that other executives are even using Chat GPT yet. And I just submitted a stellar performance review with the help of Chat GPT, and also was able to do the same for my team members. Lastly, I'm not a very sensitive person, and so I can come off as insensitive. And there are times where I maybe have ChatGPT help me come up with a response that is a little bit more compassionate.
My name is Ted Maple. I'm the Director of Data Engineering for Community Health Network. Been there about 4 years. So we oversee the data engineering department, the team. And so basically we handle data movements both in the network and throughout the network and out of the network, doing extracts, ingestions, things like that. And moving data from the different operational systems over into our data warehouse. Currently, right now, we're really in the midst of standing up our Azure environment for advanced clouds and Databricks, data factory, those type of things, and actually putting those systems into place. And from a standpoint of, we have a team on our team, we have 10 people on our team within the analytics team, part of a leadership team for our analytics department. So we are a centralized analytics department for our network, which is a little bit out of the ordinary, works very, very well. Because we're able to actually really draw on a lot of different experience and a lot of different skill sets for the organization from our team. So we have data engineers, we have data analysts, we have data science as well, executive decision support, Power BI developers as well as a part of our central team. So it really is a wide range of skill sets there that we can draw upon, and then reach out to at the elbow for help. So if we're pulling in data, we're doing some engineering, some modeling, things like that, and we kind of understand what the end result wants to be for the business. It really helps be able to have that team put together there for both the BI developer and the engineer as well, to be able to work hand in hand when data is coming from a vendor or going to a vendor, and be able to actually be able to walk that through the process. So it really allows us to really get good insight on what the stakeholder is wanting, and be able to actually deliver solutions faster and really more on target, more focused. So that's been a really great thing for us as well. From a standpoint of being able to utilize AI in general. So for me and my wife, we just went to Scotland in April for 2 weeks. So it was kind of cool. I was able to get on ChatGPT and say, hey, we're going to be going to Scotland, traveling for 14 days. We want to go to these cities, these 5 different cities throughout Scotland. And we would like you to outline an itinerary for us with places to stay in, some of the most recommended sites and stops along the way. And within about 30 seconds, we had a full itinerary for 14 days that was really pretty cool, and where to stay, what to eat, what not to eat, which was just as important, I found out, by the way. Because in Scotland, they have some weird stuff that was no part of haggis, by the way. I tried it, I'll never eat it again. But we tried it. So was able to really do some great things like that. Also, along this way, As being a director, interact with both our teams on the technical side, but also executives as well for leadership. So, being able to actually try to do some communications, for example, like job descriptions, those different types of things. We're bringing in job descriptions for moving off of BI developers over to data engineers and trying to kind of make sure we correlate those. I was able to actually utilize GPT to help with those and help do some outlines on those and better focus those areas throughout. It was a phenomenal tool for that. Also, doing communications for emails, those type of things. If we got some things we're trying to communicate to the team, whether it be some kind of a policy or just kind of a executive summary, those type of things, or just some new technologies that are out there I wanted the team to be aware of. From me being the technical side of it, sometimes the executives don't want to hear all the down in the weeds technical side of things. So I can plug a lot of things into GPT and say, hey, here's the points I want to get across. My audience on this is for my engineering team. So I want to have this be, outlined for engineers. But I can take the same points and the same context and say, hey, now I want to do the same thing for my executive leadership and, put this in an executive format for that audience. And it's allowed me to be so productive and be able to communicate much better, both on the technical side and the non-technical side of it, be able to communicate. And it's been a great tool for me in those areas.
Tim Courtney, I'm the COO for Unify Autism. We're a startup autism company and focusing in Indiana. We're also in North Carolina and New York. Also self-proclaimed as technologist, futurist. I'm going to be way on the extreme end of all the AI adoption policies. I'm pretty extreme in those areas. I'm super excited to have a conversation here today. I think on a lot of the similar ways in which AI, I'm kind of making use of it a lot, but a real fun way that I found that AI has been super helpful for me is on Peloton. You can actually use the guide, and it, with computer vision, keeps track of all my reps. So when I'm working out, it's counting all my reps, keeping track of everything. It's been pretty amazing just to see. But I'm using, it's also baked into my classes. I can ask Meta questions whenever I want and kind of interact with AI. Brainstorming, amazing. It just really opens up a lot of possibilities. It allows to be able to kind of approach problems and look at things from a lot of different kind of unique ways. So I'm super excited about conversation and AI in the future.
Adrienne Watts, VP of Data and Analytics at Moser Consulting. I've been with Moser since 2016. I joined as a data engineer and I've worn a lot of hats between there and my role now. We offer all kinds of data and analytics services, so including AI implementation. So if you're interested after this, feel free to reach out to chat about any of this stuff. As far as personal and professional uses of AI, I use AI all the time. I think we've become pretty comfortable with certain implementations of AI in our personal lives, from the Amazon, Alexa, Echo devices at home. I wear the Whoop band to the gym, or if I go for a run. We all have Siri on our phones, real-time updates to directions. They'll navigate around traffic and accidents, etc. At work, I use it a lot of the ways that people have already highlighted, but I use it a lot for content creation. So brainstorming, if we're drafting a contract, it'll help you write email. I have Copilot installed on my Outlook now, so I usually draft my email first and I click the little button that will tell me I need to adjust my tone and be more assertive, add more context, ways like that. So I think a lot of us in our roles are using AI all the time. And then I can speak to Moser. We have a couple of larger projects going on right now as well. So the first one is an LLM implementation. I think a lot of organizations have hundreds, if not thousands, of documents sitting around that they'd like to analyze. And so we're just leveraging some custom development on top of the engines that already exist, and you can point it at a directory, SharePoint, OneDrive, etc. It will analyze all of that content for you, and you can ask it natural language questions and get answers back. We do write for RFPs on a regular basis, and instead of having to go back through dozens of documents and say, what year was it when we wrote about AWS, we can just put the information in the prompt and it will get a pretty solid first draft for us. So we still have to have all the experts and do the editing, but They can also tag the documents that it's pulling the responses from, so you can locate them or gain more context that way. And the second project we're working on right now is a prompt interface on top of a structured database. So if non-technical users want to get access to their data and not have to open a ticket or learn to write SQL, you can just type in a natural language question and get answers back from that relational database. So examples might be how many orders did we ship last month? How many database tables have a product ID field? How many tickets were solved in less than 2 hours? So just natural conversational language that you can answer now with a pretty low key implementation of the prompt interface on the database.
Yeah, and I'm excited about that implementation. I can write SQL. I shouldn't be in data for 20 years and not be able to do that. But as somebody who can, to be able to not do it and just ask a question, sign me up for that as an easy button. The other thing is empowering some of our managed services, which I'll now over, for us to be able to analyze a vulnerability and say, who does that impact? So what client has this application? Where is it running? So now that I know how to go to communicate that, is something that, if you put yourself in that position, you got to go manually try to figure out. So be able to just ask that is going to be amazing. And a lot of these use cases are within the last year, right? And so that's what's even more amazing. I have to confess, I had you guys answer the professional question about AI. Melinda had put this out on Eventbrite, had all the information there, and she said, hey, can you facilitate this for me? So I played the ChatGPT cartoon, gave it to Link and said, I got to facilitate this mess. Can you go write me a script? And can you organize the questions into these 3 things? And that's what we're going to run off today. It broke those things up for us to first look at end user and business value. So I want us to start there with some of the questions that were online. I definitely want us to dig in a little bit around the infrastructure and data architecture necessary, particularly for folks that want to bring that technology in-house and what that means. And then lastly, we'll end on some of the questions that were executive level about what should they be looking for? What should they be thinking about next? So first, Chair, so I'm going to put you on the spot because in your intro, you really keyed on focusing in on automation and business value. You've got a lot of people working on you. So I'd really like to dig in there specifically. What are some of the ways that you're currently looking at these AI assistants or automations to help the administrative tasks within your organization?
Yeah, I'd love to share some examples that we've implemented just within the last 2 years. So again, because of these budget restrictions that we have within healthcare, we have to do more with less. And because of that, that's caused us to dig into operations. And an example is I have credentialed coders, and some of them were only going into charts and making sure that a document and a signature was on an encounter. So for like low-level E&Ms as an example, we don't need a credentialed coder to do that. And luckily, we also have some unique IS talent. And so we developed a web service to go into Cerner and confirm that a note was available, it was signed appropriately, and then put a charge router in place within our billing system. And we are automating about 1.5 million encounters a year without coder intervention, without any manual intervention. And so it saved us a lot of money to be able to carry the load. We've also been partnering with our clinicians to implement nuanced stats. And so this is really going to change the providers' lives. And so what this is like a virtual scribe. And so you press a button, you're in a room with the patient. This virtual scribe is going to listen and clinically document everything that occurs. It's even smart enough to know how it's going to file in the electronic medical record. And so the provider doesn't have to do anything other than interact with that patient and sign off on it. And I'd love to see this go a step further, right? Which is also dropping a charge. So if anyone has ideas around that, I'd love to partner with you on that. And the physician would love that as well. We've also implemented Iodine in the clinical documentation improvement space. And so what we noticed is our CDSs or clinical documentation specialists, they were just going through and trying to look at a multitude of encounters to try to figure out if a query was needed, if there was any opportunity within some of these encounters. And by implementing this machine learning, it was able to actually look at the entire encounter and then prioritize encounters for us to review. So a lot of the automation and machine learning can help you with, we'll say, not touching some things and being more efficient and helping to prioritize things that you actually need to be looking at.
Yeah, so kind of piggybacking on this, I want to swing to Tim because I know now Tim says, hey, we're in a startup mode. Just he's well over a decade in ABA therapy. And so we met Tim when he worked for another organization who's a client of ours. And so this is not new to Tim or to your partners. But over the past few weeks, we've had these conversations as you set up new facilities about a use case that Cherish had mentioned around audio transcription and how you deliver that. Where is your mindset from a CEO perspective around the use of AI in the clinical environment?
Yeah, what's really interesting and Cherish really hit on it is like freeing up the mind space for the clinician to really be able to focus on it. You know, so often they're thinking about, okay, what do I need to make sure it's captured? What do I have to have documented for the billable session? What do I need to make sure it's happening? What time is it? What's going on? Where are we at? And then all at the same time, all these, client issues are presenting right in front of them. And, so if you can free up the mind space where all I have to do is focus on that, all the clinical data is being captured for me automatically, all the information I need to know is readily available when I need it. So you have this like the beauty of, a lot of this unstructured data. This is something you guys have been, Moser has been a real great partner around. Is every data input that we can get, just find it all, we'll put it, we'll sort it, but now you'll have easy access to the natural language kind of queries. That's the most fascinating part on the back end, being able to ask and interact with your data in a very natural language. Just ask and arm the clinician with all that. But I think the main goal is, setting up camera systems, sensors, everything that we can have. So all of that information is coming in so that we can easily kind of capture it, easily convert it into whatever format we want. But with the overall goal of just increasing patient outcomes and, really clearing out clinicians so they can just focus on doing what they're trying to do.
I was just gonna add that, in some of our meetings, you can just use the AI to take the meeting notes, right? So that you're not spending so much time taking notes, that you can be more engaged, you can react to body language, you can get deeper into the conversation. And at the end of our last meeting, Tim sent out within 2 minutes, like, here are the meeting notes, right? Generated by AI.
Yeah, DJ, as a Cherish being a sort of a customer, if you will, of all of these initiatives, we had a question that came in from the audience. I'm going to pinpoint you. Given that all of the federal guidelines are pending for the use of AI, and we're talking about regulated environments here, how are you currently evaluating tools that might, hit those long-term initiatives, which are going to be tied to these compliance requirements?
Yeah, there's probably a smaller version of that conversation within organizational compliance and governance and security as well. So I'm sure anyone who's been tinkering with these tools and systems and softwares is automatically triggering all the alarm bells of the traditional security folks in your teams and have to answer a lot of questions, right? I've been down that path myself. There's really no easy answer to that. It's truly more of that risk reward continuum threshold, and then just ensuring what are the security measures in place, or I should say the security thresholds that your organization deems important. So we've had to do a lot of working within our own internal teams with our formalized security teams to say, okay, what are kind of the guardrails or the sandbox, if you will, in which we have the permission space to play? What are very specifically those guardrails that if we want to go outside of that zone, we need to seek permission or seek partnership or seek approval? And again, I think what we're finding is that stuff isn't well defined, right? So just as it's new technology to us as operators, it's new technology to the IT folks and security folks. So sometimes that's a not sure answer, and let's go look at this together and figure it out answer. But we kind of have been evolving those thresholds and guardrails as we're going.
And staying in sort of the end user perspective, but now focusing on your team rather than sort of the healthcare delivery aspect. You know, what's that look like, you know, for your guys, girls, as they're like, what tools are they looking at for automating so that they're faster at delivering all these capabilities that the business wants?
So we're a Microsoft shop, so we have access to the Azure stack. And then for our low code, no code developers, our citizen developers, if you will, they're all using the Power Automate platform, the Microsoft Power Platform, Power Automate being one of those tools. So we're all kind of within that environment. We've just launched out we're calling it kind of the low code, no code governance platform. It's gone through a couple of different names at this point, but same concept applies, right? It's that shared partnership collaboration zone. We've kind of bucketed things into 3 sections. So we have the green zone, if you will, which is, hey, that's deemed kind of safe, secure, not really a big risk from a data perspective, not really a big risk from a supportability. If it breaks, nothing's going to die on the vine perspective. The other end of that spectrum is you've got some really sensitive data in there, either coming in or going out. Ooh, that's such a big production value now that if it breaks, we're going to get a world of trouble until it gets fixed. So we need to have some of the more formal IS architecture or boundaries around that. The reality is most of it fits somewhere in the middle of those 2 things, right? We call that kind of the gray zone or the yellow zone, if you will. And that's the, okay, there's probably some elements in here where we need some kind of oversight or visibility, even if it's just a catalog that this exists. So that if someone somewhere asks a question about it, there's at least something documented somewhere of what it is, who owns it, what it's doing. But it's not necessarily something that the full IT team has to own or control. But then in some of those applications that are connecting to more secure data, it's okay, how do we build out the data infrastructure to ensure we have a secure connection there so we're not leaking anything? How do we ensure that this is used within the space that it needs to be used in, not anywhere else? So maybe it's something that's locked down by single sign-on for just users who need to have access to it. Maybe it's something that the data collected goes into a secure location. It's not just anyone with an IU Health credential can access it. We've been down a handful of those paths, and it usually falls in that gray yellow zone.
Kind of staying there. I'm about to swing back to a couple questions that are end user, but we've already kind of veered into this IT data architecture path. Ted, you talked about you're going through work right now with your, what I'll say is your enterprise data warehouse setup. It's in Azure, obviously preparing for the integration of these types of tools. And so let me just set a context here that might not be apparent. For organizations who have already invested in architecture to get value out of their data through business intelligence, it's the same architecture that's utilized in order to push data into a language model and get it out to these other tools, right? So those foundational things are going to be, necessary. Data governance that DJ hit on. What are some other key things that really people need to be thinking about if they're looking at bringing that technology in-house from an infrastructure perspective?
For us, so we're literally right in that. So we have a traditional BI tool, we're Microsoft shop as well. We had a traditional EDW organizationally, and then we were hitting it with legacy tools such as SSIS, SSRS, and some reporting tools, Power BI. So as we're working on migrating that over into Azure, so one of the big things that we kind of figured out is skills from a skill set standpoint. We've got to take a look at new approaches on doing what we used to do. When before, the only thing we would, basically the main tool we had was SQL, right? So every problem we had to solve was with SQL. Well, now we've got a lot of different tools in Azure that we have access to. So being able to take a look at that and say, okay, well, what's the best tool to be able to solve this problem versus saying, how am I going to make SQL twist into a pretzel or move this data or do this to it, whatever it may be? We've got a lot of different tools now. So one of the big focuses that we've had for our teams within analytics, not just engineering, but within analytics, and that's also starting to go out into the network as well from data literacy, but is skill sets. Looking more from the standpoint of data engineering skill sets, which is just kind of expanded versus just a BI developer, which mainly was SQL, right? I mean, there's some other tools in there as well, but basically SQL. So that's been one of the focuses for us, and one of the things we've kind of had to get our heads wrapped around. What does that look like? And then also, what does that transition path look like because we still got to keep the lights on, right? We still got to keep things moving forward. Still got to keep customers happy and those type of things as well. But so how do we move our teams forward from a skill set perspective and can get trained? And then along with the governance as well, and then kind of taking a look at our EDW and our, the stack that was, what does our data estate look like now? And then do our best as an organization is what do we want it to look like as we move forward to be able to take advantage of machine learning, AI, generative, those type of things, and then kind of understanding that, and then getting everybody on board and everybody aligned on that as best that we can. So that's been a couple of things we've been focusing on really the last several months. I've been kind of taking this journey forward with generative AI overall.
Yeah, I'm gonna stack on that just a little bit. You talked about the major need being upskilling the technical folks, and I would say that's true of the operational folks as well. One of the biggest things I found is we're rapidly advancing to a spot where it's a need to find the upskilling ability of people to take advantage of these technologies. So you can build all kinds of cool things all you want, but if your people don't take advantage of them and use them, it's all for naught. We're quickly getting to a world where the products are called co-pilots. They're not do it for you pilots, right? It needs a pilot to run with. So it's trying to get folks comfortable and trained on how to use effectively those tools so that they can kind of pursue that path.
One of the other things too, I was just there was a Gartner presentation kind of to add to what you're talking about there in upskills. About it, really kind of taking a look at a tool and that tool or that technology really being transformative in an organization or just another neat tool that people can utilize and use. And they were talking about not just from the technical teams learning how to use that tool because it's hard. And I do this too because I'm an engineer, so I'm kind of a data nerd. So I really love this kind of things. And we get excited about, how much data can we handle, how fast can we move data, and those type of things. But that's one piece of it. But the other part of this too is the business. When you have skills that you really have two sides of the coin, in my opinion, the business also has to upskill and understanding and learning what generative AI can do transformally from a transformation standpoint, and what it can't do. So from the standpoint of data literacy, how to use Gen AI in the day-to-day and those type of things as well. So the non-technical or the business users, it's just as important for them to upskill as well as the technical teams as well for that tool to really be transformative throughout an organization versus just another tool that people can kind of utilize.
Yeah, this is a real struggle. So if I look at the operational teams, it's, encouraging and setting the expectation that you understand the technology with which you're working in. And not only that, but understanding what else is out there on the market. And then when you go to put AI in place or new technology or automation, you don't walk into the room with this is how I've always done it. You have to start thinking about the process differently. So really focusing on the decision points, the business rules. But it is a struggle to change a mindset and to get operations to start to think like that. And hopefully we can continue to overcome this gap and continue to encourage.
Yeah, so in that, what ideas do you guys kind of have? Adrian, you're going to say something. So swing it into this question. You start first. What ideas do you guys kind of have on first charging individuals with the expectation that they might need in order to perform at the top of their skill level, because the productivity level is going to change for them. And then it's also charging executives to ensure that we're aligning the tool sets right to allow them to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I was going to comment on just what a unique state that we're in with this technology, right? Usually when a new product is released, it's in a more stable state, it's fully productized before organizations start adapting that so fully. And in this case, organizations are adapting generative AI while it's still evolving. So the importance of staying on top of all the trends and what's changing and what's the impact and what's the new best practice is more important than ever. And then more directly to your question, how do we upskill or inspire our teammates to stay up with those trends and learn new skills? And a lot of that is low tech, right? It's just communication. reaching out to them, letting them know that this technology is really here to augment their abilities and empower them. Last time we talked, DJ pointed me to a quote from Harvard Business Review. I had an article from a Harvard professor about AI will not replace jobs, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity right now for people to be more efficient, create more content with the power of these large engines that have scanned millions of documents and content out there. Is going to produce more creative results faster, more quickly than if it's just one person trying to create that on their own. I don't know, with Moser, we do an annual PPP plan with our consultants, right? So technology is a big component of that. And we can just kind of set goals, like this is where the future is going. We keep up with, monthly one-on-ones and company meetings, et cetera. So we're focused on tech. And so we do this, but we also know we've got to keep sight on the individual.
Yeah, so maybe it's just me, but as you engage and talk with other folks, whether it's in your business or elsewhere, do you feel sort of there's still this natural resistance within the space? I'm just kind of interested in your observations of that, because we have this conversation and we're taking and assuming for granted that, yeah, productivity is going to change. Hey, Sean, you're at this level right now, but later whoever's in your role is going to be here, and because they're using these tools. And I don't know if that's just a known thing, like with folks when I talk with. So I'm kind of interested in just your personal interactions.
Yeah, and I would say that's true. It didn't start with AI. It existed before that. So we've been on a pretty good journey of automation for a few years now. That started really with just some of the simple robotic process automation tools. And the very first thing that we did was say, hey, teams that do this work every day, recommend good candidates for our PA. Crickets, right? Why do you think that is? Fear, right? It's the fear of the unknown. It's the, if I propose something that automates the work that I do, boy, what does that mean for me? There's kind of two angles of this, right? It's like getting over that fear of the unknown perspective of equipping people with not only the permission space, but also incentivizing that, right? So how do you not just say the words innovation in your mission statement or say that on the walls of the posters, but actually influence it in your culture with everyday actions? To me, that's how do you incentivize it. And I don't mean like throwing bonuses out there. It's more like, what is your informal reward system, right? What gets seen as success? How do you measure success? How do you set goals? My current leader gave my direct team a goal a few years ago. She just called the innovation goal. And the goal was pretty simple. It was once a quarter, 4 times a year, you had to design and implement to change something from the way it's always done to something different. Through any means, it wasn't even a technology goal, right? Just an innovation goal. And the way you met that goal was by implementing something new to solve a problem that the current process was not solving, and then reporting out to the peer group what you tried, did it work, did it not work, lessons learned 4 times a year. And we got a lot out of that. I would tell you, we didn't get a whole bunch of like transformational solutions out of that. We definitely got a couple. What we got was a culture of it was not only safe, but expected that you're going to challenge the status quo and then report back to your wider group what you tried, why you tried it, what you learned from it, and what we're going to either cut, beat, move on to the next thing, or what we're going to spit it into the next thing. And that culture is sustained for a few years now and kind of snowballed into what we've got now. Right.
I've already admitted that I'm not very sensitive. So once I started implementing automation and suddenly people were very unhappy, I was shocked. But what I learned was there's a lot of fear, like DJ said. And so as we start to implement other solutions, I try to do better communication. And so just a lot of communication around how the jobs are changing. We're not going to lose jobs. Please don't leave us. But the resistance is real. And like I said, I am shocked by it. And so we just try to do a good job of bringing everyone to the table, making sure that we have clinical partners as well. So we're a massive system. My email is very large, and really to implement anything, we have to have provider partners. But communication and just taking the time to talk through things has been really helpful and slowing down a little bit.
For our teams, one of the things we try to do is from a kind of innovation standpoint, to encourage that as well. We encourage, when we basically create a safe place for them to fail, and we encourage to fail fast. and to start small, kind of like you just talked about an LLM. When you think about like an LLM project, you think about we've got to create these big, massive data models, and it has to be a big, huge, massive data set. Well, it really doesn't. To kind of get things started off, it's just a standpoint, one of the things we'll take a look at is just a small LLM and bringing in some PDF files, just a small handful of PDF files, because we just literally want to be able to paint the picture or draw the picture of somebody chatting with data on a very, very small scale. So we try to come up with ideas that would be impactful, that the business will understand and will be useful to them. And then what's, the technical term MVP, but what's the minimum amount we can actually paint that picture with? And can we get that done and figure it out it's going to work or not work very, very quickly? And that has really paid dividends for us. We've been transitioning over into the new environments up into Azure, because we've got brand new tools that we've introduced and learned and innovated in the last year and a half, from legacy technologies into all the latest Azure technologies for moving data in and out of the network, for processing data for EDW, machine learning, all those type of things, even the new AI studios, these type of things as well, and all the different connectors. And my team interacts somewhat with Power Platforms, and that's a huge animal in itself. But again, it's that safe place and encouraging people to make mistakes and fail, and that's okay, because we have those guardrails around it. And then that's where we learn, and taking those lessons learned. And once your team can kind of get that culture, kind of what she's talking about, it's really neat when you kind of introduce something or learn something and kind of put that out to the team and give them some time and some space to play in, and to see where they can take what was and then move that forward in such a way. It's incredible to see how they can really be energized and move that process or that technology forward. And it's really great to see how that's impactful throughout the network.
And change is in general pretty aversive to most humans. Like, we don't really like change. We don't like our cheese getting moved around. We like our tech stay the same. And the more effort things that comes into place like that, typically for adoption of technology has been a problem. Like, you have to have a lot of knowledge, you have to have a lot of infrastructure. And it often you would do things and then there's a delay. So anytime there's a delay between I engage in some action and then I get some benefit from it, and if the farther delay that is, the harder it is to get adoption. What's amazing about this, the knowledge is really easy to access, and you access the reinforcement right away. Like, we'll see massive adoption very easily, because you'll have very challenging kind of issues. How do I reply to this email? Oops, summarize it. Here's the information. Here's some suggestions on how to respond. Boom, you're done. And how long did that take? 12 seconds. So it's like I'm instantaneously going to access it. Adoption will be a very, very easy thing. It's not like one of these things where I'm going to have to see the data that I perform better. I will see myself performing better. I'll access it right away. So it'll be a very easy thing to get adopted.
I just wanted to respond to one of the things that Ted said, is that it's impactful to start small. And so I think sometimes we picture the Amazons and Googles of the world with teams of dozens of data scientists building these big, incredible machine learning models and AI models. And the reality is, with the stuff that's been released in the last year or two, it's really easy to start small with the tools that are already out there. The Indiana census data came out last quarter, and it just showed that 90% of companies in Indiana are not yet using AI. And I think people sometimes don't know where to start or how to start. And it's okay to start small, right? There are all these tools available, so you can upskill really quickly. You can reach out to your friendly partner to help you get started and pick that first use case, because those can be very impactful as well.
Yeah, let's stack on that, because back to when we first started in the introductions, how it impacts people most, it's that, right? It's that the tools that have been released and the technology has been released over the past couple of years have almost democratized technology to the point where it no longer has to be like a thing exclusively owned by the formal technology teams. If I have to submit an idea, wait for this limited resource that never has resource availability to build my idea, send it to me, tell them how it doesn't quite match what I was thinking in my head, right? I can just do it myself. I have no formal background in technology or IT. I didn't get a degree in that subject. But I've been able to get in there and build some pretty cool things just because of the ease of the tools and the accessibility of the tools. Truly, that's what I think is transforming right now.
So we had a question come in from the audience. I'll rephrase it a little bit here, but where would you encourage the audience to sharpen their skills and understanding to kind of keep pace? Like if you were going to point people towards the easy thing, where would you be pointing them towards today? Adrian.
Yeah, I walked into that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is like, we need another hour. Yeah. So I think that there's like a whole matrix of how do you pick your first use case, and it's going to vary from person to person. And sometimes that use case is based upon what defines a win, a quick win, a political win. Do I need certain stakeholders to see the value in this in order to open funding or staffing decisions, etc.? Sometimes it's based upon what data infrastructure that you have in place currently, what data you have access to currently. And sometimes it's just about automation. And you don't need a lot, but the processes that your administrative team or other team is just doing the same redundant steps every single day that can be very easily automated. So my answer is it depends, right?
That's a consulting answer.
Yeah, the definition of success is going to vary wildly. To be a little bit more direct in my answer, it's not going to be about tech. I think it's just keeping up on what's available and what's possible. And there are a lot of ways to do that. So you can use your network, you can use your partners and vendors, you can use your current staff. I think the easy win for me is I just scroll through LinkedIn. If you're following people in those particular spaces, leaders in AI or technology hashtag of your choice, you can very quickly get access to what's trending and what's changing and where the interests are. And I know attention spans are short, time is precious, and it's just real quick. And if you hit like or save, it will keep giving you more of those types of posts to follow. And then when you see the ones that are of interest to you, then obviously you're going to spend time doing deeper research, getting more content, researching particular areas. But it's really easy on LinkedIn to just save the post and see how much is changing and how much is available and what the new releases are.
I think just in addition to like I would find pain points, like what are things that are really painful and aversive for everybody in your group, commonly encountered. Meetings is a great example. Like we're all in meetings, we're sitting there the whole time, people are taking notes, you wonder if they're paying attention. You see them kind of distracted looking around, but if you can capture key info, set out to-dos, find out, what are the minutes, summarize everything, make some of the complicated things, make them super easy, and get that out in like 5 seconds, immediately after a meeting. People quickly are going like, "Oh, how did you do that? What, how can I do that? What do I need to do?" It's just starting to model and get people to access things that are just regularly encountered, painful kind of situations.
Yeah, one of the places that we found a lot of success with this, with the citizen developer space, is tapping into the project management team's intake, right? So us, like I'm sure almost every company out there, there's more demand than there's supply of technology talent. And so there's always, 1,000 ideas that come in and maybe 10 of them that actually can be funded and resourced for that year. And so what we've done is to say, okay, what are the things that keep getting raised up as a pain point that never make the cut for like the formal projects? And what can we go tackle out of that? And got some quick wins there. Quick wins get attention. To your point is, well, how did you do that? And it started with us with like 3 to 5 people building these things, and we're up at like 240 people now that have been sharing these things. Through that, like, whoa, show me how you did that. And, okay, let's get you into the next session, right? And you'll find it just kind of snowballs from there.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say before you jumped in there. Is like if I was a business owner, I had nothing about this. I'm in here, and if there's something, you can get discouraged because you can think it's all technical, right? We're talking about technical implementations of stuff. But if I wanted to prepare for that impact on my business, well, let me at least go back to the value chain here for my business and how I deliver products and services. And let me make sure I have that well documented, because when DJ shows up that has the knowledge to know how to delivers some of this stuff or automate it, what do you think he's going to ask for first? He's going to ask for that information. So that's definitely somewhere that if organizationally you haven't, it's chaotic, it's a mess, it's like if that's all disjointed, I would be preparing to get that stuff solidified because that's what's going to empower the folks that are going to implement it. But
And that's definitely true, and to extent as well, trying to kind of see where we're going to go with other things also. And as leaders and as technologists and things like that, also getting engaged with our leadership and executive leadership as well, because they have an understanding of the needs of the business also. So they're trying to set vision and trying to set direction and those type of things too. So we're communicating and working with them and partnering with them. That also kind of gives us an idea of where, you know, we need to do from our standpoint for our teams is infrastructure and engineering, those type of things. So we can kind of plan, you know, what do we need to put in place from our teams to be able to meet those needs that they're trying to plan for over the next 12, 18, 24 months. So, you know, all of us as leaders and things like that, be able to take a look and understand what the vision and the direction is going from our executive leaders and our one-ups and executive leadership and things like that as well, will also help us understand the needs for skill sets and things like that that's going to be coming down the road. And, you know, to Sean's point, when they get to that point and start asking those questions, we can reach out and say, hey, we can help you with that. We can partner with you on that. We're ready for that.
so DJ, I got a couple tech stuff. Want to hit a couple infrastructure. We did a little bit questions, but for those that are eventually looking to bring this technology in-house, right? So they have external facing implementations. We talked about ChatGPT. I really can't control what's teaching that thing, just, you know, but I can use it. I don't want to put my data out there, right? At some point, I want to get more value out of the data I have. How important is organizational centralization of that data and the processes? How important is that to implement these types of technical strategies?
Extremely. So I'd say not only centralization, but more structure and standardization. That's one of the lessons we had to learn early was you typically from a business perspective have this, okay, I've got a problem. Let me just throw it at a technology solution and say, go solve my problem. Build me the magic pill that fixes my thing. What's my diet pill for this, right? They don't exist. So typically what happens is that technology team would say, okay, great, we can help build a solution that solves for that. Almost all solutions are universally data driven. Show me your data around it. Oh, wait, we don't really have any data around it because, you know, it's 15 versions of a process, you know, 20 different places that, you know, it's titled this here and that there, but they really mean the same thing. You just have to know that though, right? And so then it goes back to the business and say, okay, well, what do we need to do differently to get this data collected in a manner that then can feed the solutions you then want to build? So that tends to be this, if you're familiar with whitewater rafting, they have this concept called the eddy, where you just kind of get stuck in that swirl of the rapids and you're not really moving anywhere. That's where a lot of automation dreams live and die, right? It's like we have this idea, we throw the technology team, it swirls in that eddy until it dies. Why didn't it go anywhere? And it's usually because of that. So we've had to start the conversation with what problem are we trying to solve? What's the desired end game? Like what is it you're trying to achieve? So preferred outcome equals X, right? Don't give me preferred way to get to outcome equals X, because usually that's where the business owners start. If they're not familiar with the processes, they want to say, here's the 27 steps of how I do this thing. I want you to automate exactly those 27 steps. And it's like, well, it's not really a need to do that. Like, what is the outcome of those 27 steps you're trying to achieve? Let's work then backwards to say, what are the data elements that it takes to get to that? Where are those data elements going to be today? And if they're not consistent or standard or centralized, how do we start there? And that's kind of the beginning of the journey.
Yeah, we've been leaning into RPA bots. So what's the repeatable processes that don't require a lot of critical thinking? But now we're taking a step back to say, okay, how proactive can we be? At what point in the process, whether it's with the provider or the clinician, how can we fix it up front? We're also trying to lean into master data management, which will help with all of this, although it is slow to really kick this off. But identifying golden records, source of truth, how's everything going to be stored? I think in time will be steps into that, I hope, but that would help tremendously. But master data management is the key, but it's very difficult to actually implement when you have so many systems.
Yeah, I would say our beginning of this journey a couple of years ago was about just automation through like the simple RPA. So the repetitive tasks you hit a point of decision and guess what? It can't do that, kicks it out for a human to say, couldn't figure this out. It was something different than what I was programmed to do. I think where we've been advancing lately is getting more into the AI machine learning things where it's how do we simplify decision making for humans for things that are traditionally really hard decisions to make, right? One of the benefits I think we have at IU Health is, being the biggest hospital system in the state, we have just a mountain of data. So how many encounters we have a year? A ton. How many physician visits we have a year? A ton. How many claims we send a year? A ton. That's just a mountain of data we can process through and train these models on to say, okay, what are the factors that matter in predicting this outcome that the human may not know? So maybe it's historically we say, okay, we're going to try from a human's brain perspective to say, okay, this factor of like patient's age and where they're physically located and what their diagnosis code is equals, we're going to try to do this. Well, now you have these machine learning models that can say, okay, there's maybe 45 different data points that we've been able to identify that this combination of things matter and what we then recommend or predict to do. Human brain can never comprehend those like 45 things, especially at a scale of thousands of people trying to make a consistent decision like that, right? So it's that, it's getting to that simplification and also the consistency, which I don't think we talk about it.
Yeah, it's interesting, being in the data world, which I should retire from. I don't think you can retire any day. If you're in it, I think you're just in it for life. We used to talk about the maturity of analytics, the maturity of insight. So we want to start with business intelligence. We want to track the decision-making process. Then we want to be able to get to automation. And that was sort of the maturity process, right? And it's still true, but more and more I feel like for organizations that aren't doing that yet, now the pressure is coming top down, right? Where they want to start in the AI space, although they're not doing the business intelligence stuff. And they didn't maybe really understand the foundational data architecture that existed in Power One and Power both. At least in my conversations, I don't think they connect the dots there. So I'm kind of interested in your opinion, Ted. You've been working on a data architecture. For people that have that question, what are the commonalities? Like, what is the same from a data architecture perspective, and what's actually different between supporting BI use cases and supporting AI use cases?
So even we're doing the machine learning and generative AI and things like that, the fundamentals from a standpoint of handling data and governing data, the fundamentals are still the fundamentals, no matter what it is. And so just that baseline, data governance or good data hygiene, good processes, those type of things. So that still is one of the fundamental things, no matter what technology it is. There's a meme that's out there. I think it was on LinkedIn. I saw it, and it basically was an iceberg. And if you'll know an iceberg, you talk about the iceberg, how what we may see sticking above the water looks very large to us, looks humongous to us, but that's just a very small part of the iceberg. The majority of the iceberg is actually submerged under the water. And when we talk about, and so this meme had this picture of this iceberg, and at the top of it, it had ML and AI as a label at the top, which is the iceberg sticking above the water. But underneath that water, basically had the caption of data and infrastructure. So we still have to have those fundamental structures there with the data models. We've got to have good, strong, consistent ingestion processes and extractions and all those type of things, and that governance and control, transformations, normalizations, things like that you talked about. We still have to have all those quote unquote EDW foundational processes and functions still in place for even the advanced generative AI. And we're doing some of the same things, even though we're using quote unquote advanced tools in Azure for Data Factory, and we're putting in Databricks now with a data lakehouse, with some of the newer technologies. But we're still doing the same thing. It's just a different process and a more streamlined, optimized workflow. We're doing it better and faster. We still have to have some of those foundational things in. We still have to understand and know our data estate. Where's our data going to? Where's our data coming from? And what's our processes from a standpoint of how are we going to get the data in? How are we going to report on that data, clean the data, qualify the data, and make sure that it is good data that we can make good business decisions on. So in my opinion, those fundamentals never change, even though we are using, cutting edge technology. Those processes were put in place, 20 years ago? Yeah. On some of those, so that hasn't changed.
So, but for folks that non-technical, but they know some key terms from a data perspective, do you still need bronze, silver, gold layers, or they call it, raw, trusted, refined? Are those still applicable?
Definitely. They
Okay, is like the non-SQL object storage still applicable?
Maybe.
Yeah, is the database, that's the relational interface, is that still applicable?
Well, the thing about it is, when you think about that, depending on what you're doing for our team in engineering, we're still doing EDW Lakehouse, right? So we're still doing bronze, silver, gold. But the bottom line is, the end goal is quality data that's clean and normalized and standardized across the board, because the things that are important for our team and how we use them for low code, no code, they have a different process and a different need, but they still have a need for good quality data that can make insight on.
Yep.
And Power BI developers, they don't really care for them so much about bronze layer and what we do from going from that layer to the next one and the magic sauce we've got in code behind it. They don't care. They just care that they've got good data that they can pull into Power BI and that they can get insights on for the stakeholder. So it kind of depends, but again, for engineering underneath of it, knowing our data state, where data is going to and coming from, and that we can qualify or quantify the data, and its quality, and it's usable, no matter what platform no matter where it's going to be surfaced at, is one of those things that we've got to make sure we focus on.
I can talk to that a little bit more abstractly as well. I think there's this rumor or use case that's sometimes valid, right? Where the data scientist can get all the raw data from the lake, and it doesn't have to be cleaned or prepped or transformed to get through all the reporting. So we have a perfect report with the exact number, because that takes a lot of time to get that quality controlled data. And so it depends is my answer again, right? So if you have big data and it's running raw to your lake, your AI and ML engineers can hit that data immediately, and then they can put all the rules in place to throw out the outliers. You can supplement things with KNN algorithms, etc. And you can apply some of those practices even to smaller data sets, because we're not all Google with terabytes and zettabytes of data floating around the world today. That you can supplement your data and beef it up to point these algorithms at kind of the raw data. So it hasn't gone through all of those steps, but that only gets you so far. And the use case has to be one that merits that it's okay to be within 96% of accuracy, and it's okay to throw out the 4% of records that you couldn't clean, arrived late, had too many nulls. We just can't explain them. We don't know where they came from. And all those questions, right? And so the answer really is sometimes that drives a lot of value, because you're making the type of decision where fast data at 90% is okay. And then when you want your real quality, accurate decision making, the reality is that it has to go all the way through the rest of those processes.
Yeah, so we had a question come from the audience. This is just for the panel. So as AI continues to advance, will coding or creating scripts start to become obsolete for end users?
I got that one too. I have a lot of opinions on that. The reality is that Chat GPT and all the tools that are out there today can generate code for you. It can generate Excel formulas, it can generate SQL scripts, it can generate Python code. But the reality is that it's not always accurate. It takes a human trained professional to review the output that it gave you, and it almost always still needs edited. Even if you get really, really good at prompting and how to write it. I just did an Excel formula the other day, and it gave me date diff, which has been deprecated from Excel for years, just for example. But I think that's true of all the code, right? I am teaching a university class right now on databases and SQL development, etc. And I get lots of questions from the kids like, when can we use Chat GPT? When can we not? And can I use this to create dummy test data? Absolutely, as long as you're not introducing bias and it's not going to your prod environment. But the reality is they have to know what it's doing, how it's doing it. You have to look at the code, you have to fix the parts that it didn't get right. And the only way that people get good at that is by doing it a lot of practice, a lot of code generation, debugging the errors, etc. So I wouldn't say that skill set is going to go away. It's just that humans are going to get faster at doing it when they didn't have to write 1,000 codes by hand. They got 1,000 codes from Chat GPT and then just edited a little bit. So some efficiency gains.
Yeah, I would answer that similar to almost any job in which AI and automation is advancing and helping out in that space, right? So I think about some of the things we've implemented in our operational teams that have created a lot of efficiency. And we've had to go through this journey of, okay, like the low-hanging fruit work, if you will, is pretty well automated at this point. And what's left is the more complex work that requires more complex thinking and problem solving. And very true with that same example, right? So I'd say a lot of the low-hanging fruit code that you would just write, well, now it can just be written for you. And what you need is kind of the more advanced thinkers that can problem solve or debug, or why didn't that quite work like it said it was going to, and it spit out this code at me. That's very true of pretty much all of the things we throw this kind of technology at.
And I knew this question would come. I think everybody that came to this panel knew a security question was going to get thrown out of the group. So having concerns around AI and keeping your data or conversation private. I know there are privacy promises, but what are the ways we can kind of ensure that our data and good conversations are kept secure and confidential?
We just don't tell them.
Yeah, I can start with that. And so in our space, again, we're a Microsoft shop. So anytime we're dealing with anything that's sensitive, secure, patient data, private data, it needs to stay within the framework of the sandbox walls, if you will, of our actual in-house space, which for us would be everything within the Microsoft environment. It's got all the right credentials and trusted security settings and everything. And that's our IT team's directions. Pretty much like, if you're in this environment, you're good. What they fear like crazy is someone's going to take a whole bunch of internal sensitive document or information, patient data, and go throw it in a chat prompt out on the just out on the public website, right? And that's like the big whoa. So a lot of that for us is just educating users as we're training on this technology. Like, here's the sandbox. Here's what's safe to do in the sandbox. If you're going outside the sandbox, here's what you're not okay to do. I will tell you, there's probably a lot of IT security folks that are spending a lot of sleepless nights figuring out how do they control that because there's not really a clean answer there, right? It goes back to kind of the democratizing the tools and the systems and the data. Like, there's a good side of that. There's also a negative side of that. The latter is the kind of the negative side of that, right? I wouldn't want to be an IT security person. Like, that's what I would say, because the moment you've got it figured out, it's probably going to change on you the next morning. So I don't know that there's a great answer for that, aside from just education and trying to keep exposure and visibility. But I don't know that there's a great way that anyone's figured out to say, like, how do I keep the traditional IT security thumbprint on the ants? Like, can't happen without my approval. Kind of feels like those days are quickly becoming a days of the past.
All right, so you referenced things that are inside, things that are outside. I think there's a lot of people that might not know instinctively what is inside or what is outside. So let's play a little game here, right? Chat GPT, you referenced that. So there we're talking about you're, as a user, are subscribed to a service. Maybe it's on your phone or it's on a website. And, it's what I use to say, hey, go look at this website and give me this. Is that external or is that internal?
That would be external,
Okay.
enterprise membership.
Right. Microsoft has decided by its awesome marketing and branding to call everything Copilot.
Brilliant move, by the way, right?
Yeah.
It's not confusing at all.
Yeah, so they have a Copilot, which is really their alternative with being the Chat GPT, right? Internal, external.
So there's about 8 things they call Copilot nowadays.
Yeah.
The only one that's really internal, from my understanding, is the Microsoft Copilot Studio within their Microsoft 365 framework.
Yeah. So the M365 internal, And that's because it has the access of the user, right? The user license thing. So from a security perspective, if I have access to specific things in SharePoint, I can ask that thing, go hunt that thing down. But if Adrian doesn't have access to that, it should not be able to see that.
What's pretty tricky, in the same interface, you can ship from work.
Yeah.
Not as work, right?
Yes.
And then it's asking GPT-4 and the external, same interface, right? But you just shift the button and now it's external.
I don't think we made this any clearer. I don't think that's what's I think, I guess what I would say for the users that don't quite know, there are things that are inside that are secure. There are things that are not. And this question probably has to get directed to the implementation pattern. What are we using and where is it? Go ahead.
Yeah, and so we've been walking through that with what we've been doing as well. So one of the big things that I would definitely recommend is reaching out to the security team early and often, and partnering with those guys. And then also understanding too, that just like we're having conversations about AI and we're learning about these new tools and those type of things as well, they are too. And when we partner with them and have conversations, we all learn. And it really has been, it's been a great partnership with our security team to be able to actually kind of learn and understand, what it is they're dealing with on their end. And to your point, holy cow, in the cybersecurity world, I cannot imagine, staying up at night and worrying about that and having those conversations. But we're a Microsoft shop as well. And we have reached out and partnered with Microsoft as well with our security team to help us kind of walk through those and understanding those, what is opened up, external, what's internal, and how can we best protect our data and things like that. So, with a security question, reach out early and often and partner with those guys and, get their help in this stuff. Because just like we don't understand, one of the big aha moments for me, it's like we don't understand security and all the things that they, what seemed like hoops that they want us to jump through. From their world, they don't understand data and why we do some things that we do with data and how we want to do it. So I think it's been a good partnership and learning on both sides for security and us as well. So reach out and partner with those guys.
All right, we've got about 8 minutes left. So I kind of want to end on a couple questions that we haven't gotten to, which is really around leadership and organizational focus. So you got to put yourself into the role of being the owner of a company or someone is guiding it, and how we can kind of apply this discussion, to them. So first question was, how do you envision AI reshaping the business landscape in these coming years?
We're seeing the cost of knowledge just dropping. Like, the access to foremost experts in anything and everything is right at your fingertips. Making things that are extremely complicated very simple. Like, just, the cost of computation is pretty high, and as that goes down, and we have cost of knowledge coming down, I mean, it's that alone is going to have a massive implication.
Yeah, and I lead a large team too, so similar to Cherish, my team's about 650 right now, and I've been very transparent with them that in my view, these next 5 years, this technology is going to transform the way we do work like you haven't seen since the widespread adoption of internet and personal computers being ingested into business. Now that completely transformed how people did work. I don't think it's an ask to say, hey, we need you to learn how to use this stuff. It's kind of like this is where the world is going, not just our company, the world, right? Business as you know it is changing right now. And we need to be on the forefront of that wave so we're not scrambling, trying to play catch up. But yeah, I don't hide that in the team, right? It's not a fear tactic. I'm not trying to say like, hey, you're about to be obsolete, because my whole angle with that is like, let's get there to where you're on the forefront of being a part of this change instead of scrambling, trying to figure out what happened. Why do I not, know how to do this work anymore?
Well, you're really going to be augmented, like super. Like, that's the most amazing things. Like, wow, I can achieve some amazing things and build stuff and accomplish stuff like at a scale that I would have never ever imagined 6 months ago. Like, so it's
I tell this story to a group of folks that we had to go through our training program. I remember when I first got into my professional career, one of my first roles was training, new hire training at a call center for a large bank. And the first 2 weeks of the training was computer skills, right? It was literally like, who knows how to use a computer? And if you don't know how to use a computer, let's teach you how to type, how to use a mouse. And you see these things like people holding a mouse in the air, like, it's not moving, I don't know why, right? That's kind of where we're at with this technology right now, is people were in that space with just trying to learn how it works. What does it even mean, right? But just like back then, 5 years later, those people that didn't even know how to use a mouse, pretty tough to find employment. I kind of think that's where we're headed right now. 5, 10 years from now, if you don't know how to use these co-pilots and use this data as a service, you're going to be very far behind the skills of lots of other people who do, and thus pretty uncompetitive in the employment space.
The other part of it is too, you think about the opportunities that are here in data and analytics. Seems like the whole area in self-service reporting, right? You think about co-pilots, things like that are there, AI Studio, those type of things, and what we consider, in another 18 months, with where technology is going and tools are going, prompt, use the term prompt engineering, those type of things. So, those low code, no code capabilities are out there. The access to that, and it's going to be like people using Excel, going to Excel. This is kind of the go-to to do that, when they want to try to perform something. But the ability to be able to interact and chat with data with these co-pilots and things like that, understanding and using those, that's, you think about whatever data set you may have. I want to, how much PTO do I have? You open up at the desktop, your co-pilot, and ask how much PTO do I have? To go find the answer for it. How many encounters did we have yesterday, at one of the facilities? Go answer those questions for you. So, basically we're going to become an empowered user. And even though we're engineers or BI analysts or Power BI developers or, VP of finance or rev cycle, whatever it may be, the bottom line is we're all going to be end users of this technology. And I think we're going to be, the superpowers will be empowered in a new way that we can't even imagine, in the next, few months, really, or next, 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I don't know where this is headed, but I talk to my team a lot about, let's just be engaged, let's be curious, and let's get used to continuous change. I know this change was hard, but it's just going to continue.
So I'm gonna ask this, you got something to add more?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the people who are on this panel are on the panel because they're passionate about AI and ML and automation and all the things tech. And so a lot of these use cases are further down the road than most organizations really are. So like DJ said, a lot of people are just at the beginning and trying to figure out what's possible or how to work the mouse, to use that metaphor. And if you drew a matrix of companies and you had all the leaders in that top right quadrant, and then you got your executors and your planners, most of the companies are still down here in that little emerging bucket, and we don't know where to start. And that's okay. That's been kind of a theme throughout some of our conversation today, is that we're all in that phase right now. Like, where do I start? What are the tools? What's available to me? What questions should I even be asking right now? And I think the key thing is not to go from emerging to an industry leader overnight. It's just to strive for that next best state.
So if I'm a leader and I'm thinking about my organization and growth, what should I be asking of the folks that report to me who are responsible for resourcing people and maybe changing how they do that? Questions that they ask, because maybe I don't have a champion, right? Maybe there's not an AI champion that exists. And I need to ask my team to now augment maybe how they're looking for people. What are some advice we would give them to maybe change that resourcing process?
What parts of the job suck? Right? Because a lot of times those are like the things that you do all the time, repeated, monotonous, and that's the thing I think is, I find myself personally as a consumer, like, am I paying for a human to do this thing that really is kind of overpaying for this product now? Because this could be done so much more efficiently, so much easier, if it was automated and not requiring this, fully, this human to do things very slowly, very awkwardly, very error prone, very, and they hate it. They hate it. I'm overpaying for it, right? I mean, it really shouldn't be the case. And we start with like, what requires human touch, what requires a lot of, and I can, again, free people up so they can focus on things that are more relational, more about interacting with others, more about what you're trained to do, the knowledge you have. Like, let's have you do those things. Let's build jobs that are based on what do I need you to do, and I'll just have something else do all this part of your job that sucks.
Yeah, I think about it from the perspective of if you're leading an organization, executive leadership, business owner, whatever it is, have a vision, have a strategy. Automation or AI is not the strategy, right? That's the means to achieving the strategy more efficiently, perhaps. But I think that's one of the traps that we've seen a lot of folks fall into. As I work with peers across the industry and just converse about where we're at, we're all under that same budget, shrinking in. Finances are tight in the healthcare space nowadays. Everyone's trying to get as lean as possible. And you've seen a lot of this, like, hey, our strategy is just to automate, to get cheaper. That's not really the strategy, right? That's the means of maybe achieving a strategy. But what is the vision? what's the vision? From the perspective of looking at problem solving, it's where are the problems, but creatively finding ways to solve the problems. And one of the things that I've really pushed with my team is the problems we may have, we may think are unique to us, they're not unique to us, right? They're not even unique to our industry. So for example, one of the things we were trying to solve for a couple of years ago was getting an automated way for patients to like check in and register themselves for services. And it's like, well, we can't really find any other health systems that, do this way, and not really able to find a benchmark. It's like, well, we're not the only industry that does like check in and arrival for customers. Who else does that? Yeah, but we have to be sure that who we're checking in is who they say they are, because there's all kinds of implications. But I was like, okay, well, pretty much every airline that exists nowadays has self check-in and arrival, and pretty sure they have to know who the people are too. The whole TSA thing is a thing. So, like, what can we learn from those other spaces and how they do things, and find a way to apply it to our space, even if it's not apples and apples? What can we learn from that that's maybe 80% of the solution? You just
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Let's give our panelists a hand, please. We're 1 minute over, and I can hear some of the alcoholic murmurs already. No, in all seriousness, if you have time, Verde is just down the steps right here behind us. We're all going to meet there. Obviously, talk about AI, talk about implementations, or talk about other things. That's okay, but I definitely hope that you guys will join us for a little bit of a drink before heading out in your cars. Again, I appreciate everybody coming. For those that are online, there were some questions I did not get to. So if you asked a question, pretty sure Melinda spammed it here. I will get those and work with her team, get those to the panelists, and then we'll submit out, those to all of the attendees. When you signed up, you had to give your blood and all that kind of stuff. No, but we'll get that out to you. But appreciate everybody coming. Thank you guys so much. Thanks again for the panelists, and Melinda and your team for putting this on. Thank you so much. Thanks.